The Unwanted, Chapter 25. I woke up the next morning doubled over from a stabbing pain in my lower back. Even breathing was painful. I crawled out of bed and walked slowly toward the bathroom, passing by Moonlight's room on the way. She sat in front of a mirror, staring dully at her reflection. The path that led to the outhouse seemed endless. With each step, 1,000 specks of glittering black light exploded in my eyes. I didn't bother to lock the door behind me. It was not until I was in the middle of relieving myself that I realized, instead of urine, I was passing blood. Thick globs of scarlet liquid gushed out of me. I was so frightened, I pulled my shorts back on, letting the rest of the blood stain the front of my shorts as I staggered out to search for my mother. She was in my grandparents' room with Mrs. Duong. When she pulled my shorts down to examine the problem, nothing looked out of the ordinary except for the red streams I released. "What's wrong with him?" my mother cried out in distress. "Help me, Duong." Mrs. Duong shook her head. "The beating has broken something inside him. We've got to take him to the doctor." "I can't afford a doctor," my mother said. "Besides, what good can a bunch of college graduates do? They never know what they're doing." "Then take him to see your mother's herbalist. See what he says," Mrs. Duong suggested. I had taken a sharp blow to one of my kidneys. The herbalist pronounced, since I was young and strong, it would not leave any permanent damage. The bleeding stopped after a few doses of the bitter herbs he prescribed. A week later, my grandparents returned from the hospital. My grandmother's foot was still swollen and throbbing, filled with pus. From afar, it looked like a giant overripe eggplant. Sitting in her favorite chair in the garden under the shade of a jackfruit tree, my grandmother listened as Moonlight read the Buddha's scripture to her. Gusts of afternoon heat tumbled down on top of them, creeping through the branches like dozens of snakes. Their tan skins reflected the sun, and their naked feet buried into the hot sand. They lost themselves in the chapters of the sacred book. In the past few months, Moonlight's health had noticeably declined. Every morning she woke up coughing. Then, by the well, she sat for hours with her shoulders drooped in between her knees, trying to expel mucus out of her lungs. A couple of times she threw up blood. Her cheeks had lost their rich shade of the oolong tea and taken the gray of a rotting lemon. Moonlight carefully tried to conceal her sickly appearance with makeup. The thick powder made her look like an opera singer before a performance. She greeted me the moment I walked into the garden. "Hi, Kian. How are you?" "Fine, thanks," I replied. "How is your back?" "It is much better. The herbs helped. I want to go to the temple and get some blessed medicine for my cough. Do you want to accompany me? Maybe the monks can give you something for your back. Or we can pray to the Buddha for Grandma's health." "Okay." I accepted Moonlight's invitation simply because I adored her company. She had not seen Tai Tong for several weeks due to her illness. I missed keeping guard for them under the magnolia bushes down the street at night as they stole eager kisses in each other's arms. The temple was located on a side of the mountain 20 kilometers from the house. Local people knew it as Spirited Mountain Temple. Its door was open for the sick everywhere. The trip took us 20 minutes by bus, another 20 minutes to climb the mountain. From the ground, a total of 142 steps cut into the rock led to the main lobby. Moonlight had to stop several times on the stairs, but in due time we found ourselves walking into an open ground filled with visitors. The lobby overlooked the entire city and the nearby towns. Its floor was covered in dark blue tiles, which were constantly being swept by the faithful worshippers until their surface had become like a dark ocean reflecting the sun. A giant lotus with each of its petals carved from marble sat in the middle of the ground. Its base, a cylindrical octagon, depicted hell in a series of 8 pictures. Sitting inside the petals was a statue of Buddha, 4 stories high, of white marble. His hands folded neatly on his lap, he sat with closed eyes as he pondered his own tranquility. Rumors said that his third eye had originally been made out of a large emerald, which got either lost or stolen through time. A green light bulb had since replaced the stone to cover the hole in Buddha's forehead. Its light illuminated his serene face, keeping the sacred place in order regardless of the vast number of visitors each day. The red pointed roofs of golden columns of the temple stood behind the Buddha, as beautiful and ancient as the mountain it rested on. Each worshiper was allowed to pray for one wish inside a large room filled with incense clouds. The altar was set at the far end of the room, decorated with more Buddha statues in various shapes and sizes. Most of them were covered with gold leaf or made out of bronze. A large copper urn in the center of the room held the incense. In rows from either side of the room, monks dressed in yellow robes sat in meditation. Along the mountain, a sheet of water flowed against the rocks, entering the temple from the roof. Once inside, it wound its way behind the altar and escaped through a drain in the floor to join the river below. The mist it left behind rose like a fragrant steam, keeping the temple cool all year round. On the side of the temple, a small brown brick road led to an area where the monks dispensed herbs. A small cottage behind a dense bamboo forest at the end of the road served as a hospital. Moonlight took a number from a nun standing by the entrance, and we walked inside the waiting room. After she had received 3 little bags of herbs, we strolled out to the lobby. The city seemed minuscule below our feet. "Tell me, when we were inside the temple, what exactly did you pray for?" she asked. "I was praying for Grandma, hoping she would get better soon. Then I asked the Buddha about my father." "Which Buddha did you ask? By the way, that is more than one wish, Kian." I sighed. "I know, but I prayed to the biggest one in the center, the statue that has lots of hands coming out of his body. I was hoping he would give me another wish." "Of course, the famous 100 hands and 1,000 eyes Buddha." She cleared her throat. "He is very powerful. He could grant you any wish that you may have. What did you ask him about your father?" "I asked him who my father is, whether he is thinking of me, or if he knows about my existence at all." Moonlight raised her eyebrows. "Difficult questions. What if you don't get the answers?" "Then I will continue to ask him every time I come here until I do get the answers." "Why do you want to know about your father, Kian?" "I hate living here," I said without thinking. "I want my dad to take me to America someday." Moonlight began to sing. In the muggy afternoon, her voice sounded like a mournful cry. "How are you and Tai Tong?" I asked, trying to stop the sad song. "When are you going to see him again?" "I don't know," she said. "In a few years, if I am lucky. He was drafted by the military last week to fight in Cambodia. He will be leaving by the end of this month." "Really?" I sat up and looked at her. The thought of Tai Tong in the military service was incomprehensible to me. "But today is the last day of the month." "That's true," she said. "He is leaving this afternoon." I stared at her in disbelief. "Then why didn't you stay home to say goodbye to him?" She didn't answer. Suddenly I understood. "You didn't come here for the herbs. You came here to ask the Buddha to protect him, didn't you?" She nodded. "Yes, but there is a catch. He is not going to Cambodia." "How come?" "He is going to escape, and I am praying for him to get away safely." That was my wish. "No." "Yes." "It's getting late. He's probably left already. Let's go home." She got up from the bench. I offered my arm, which she held tightly. "Don't worry," I reassured her. "I'll pray for your health next time, Moonlight." She smiled and leaned over to peck my cheek with her cold lips. "Thanks, sweetie. But if you're going to pray for me, who will ask the Buddha about your father for you?" I shrugged. "That can wait. You are my only friend in the house, and I want you to get better." I learned later from Zui that Tai Tong had left for Singapore while we were sitting at temple that afternoon. His mother had bribed many officers in town to enable him to escape. Moonlight received a letter from him a month later, stamped with the Singapore postmark. It was the only letter she would ever receive from Titon.